A forgotten piece of glass holds the key to humanity's lost history. This is desert glass, a substance born from a catastrophe so powerful it may have erased entire civilizations. By the end of this, you will see our past not as a steady climb, but as a story of shattering collapses and desperate rebirths. We will uncover why science cannot fully explain its origin and how ancient myths from every corner of the globe describe its terrifying creation. What hidden truth does this celestial material reveal about our planet's violent cycles? What does it truly mean for a society to vanish without a trace? Scattered across the sun-baked sands of the Sahara lie fields of a mysterious yellow-green glass. This is Libyan desert glass, a substance that looks like it was forged in a celestial furnace, because in a way it was. This is not the obsidian that bubbles up from volcanoes. It is something far stranger. To hold a piece is to hold pure silica sand that was instantly transformed, melted and cooled so rapidly that no crystals could form. Its very structure is a silent scream of an instantaneous, unimaginable heat. The puzzle deepens when you look at a map. These vast glass fields are not near any volcano. They rest in some of the most remote and inhospitable deserts on Earth, places where the only thing that should be flowing is sand. So what force could have delivered such a concentrated, localized blast of energy, enough to fuse the desert floor itself into a sea of glass? The sheer volume of this material tells us this was not a small event. It was a cataclysm. To forge that glass, temperatures needed to soar beyond 1,700 degrees Celsius. That is hotter than the heart of a blast furnace, a flash of heat so intense it can turn a beach worth of sand into a shimmering, solid sheet in less than a second. This is the core of the scientific mystery. How do you achieve such a perfect, localized inferno out in the middle of an open desert? For a long time, the most logical suspect was a meteorite impact. A giant rock from space slamming into the ground would certainly deliver that kind of energy. Yet, when scientists searched the vast expanse where the Libyan glass is found, they found no crater. There is no gigantic hole in the ground, no telltale scar that such a violent impact would inevitably leave behind. So if not an impact, then what? This led researchers to another terrifying possibility, an airburst. Imagine an object, perhaps a comet or a rocky asteroid, entering the Earth's atmosphere but not striking the ground. Instead, it detonates in the sky, unleashing its entire destructive potential in a single, devastating flash of heat and a shockwave that hits the Earth like a hammer from the heavens. We have a modern example of this, the Tunguska event over Siberia in 1908. That explosion, believed to be an airburst, flattened 80 million trees over an area of 2,000 square kilometers. But to create the sea of glass in the Sahara, the event would have had to be orders of magnitude more powerful than Tunguska. We are talking about a celestial fireball so vast it could have vaporized entire regions and lit entire continents on fire from the sky. This is the scale of destruction we must consider, a force not merely capable of melting sand, but of erasing civilizations from the face of the Earth. This celestial firestorm, powerful enough to glaze the desert, may have left more than just physical scars. It may have burned its way into the very memory of humankind. Across the globe, the oldest stories we possess speak of a world-ending cataclysm, a rain of fire from the heavens. In ancient Egypt, texts refer to the Tekanu, the pillars of heaven, and describe a terrifying rain of fire that swept across the land, a divine purification that scorched the earth clean. On the other side of the world, in the vast Australian outback, Aboriginal Dreamtime stories recount a time of chaos, a period when the sky itself fell, bringing unimaginable destruction. And of course, there is Plato's famous account of Atlantis, a sophisticated civilization utterly obliterated by devastating fires and floods that consumed the continent, sinking it beneath the waves in a single day and night. These are not isolated tales from a single culture. They are echoes reverberating from every corner of the planet, a chorus of legends all describing the same kind of event. The sheer consistency is staggering. How could cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia, cultures that could never have communicated, all preserve the same core story of a sky-born apocalypse? The answer might be that they are not just stories. They could be collective memories passed down through countless generations, fossilized into myth. The terrifying event that created the Libyan desert glass, that sky-born inferno, would have been witnessed by our ancestors. It would have been a trauma seared into the human psyche, an experience so profound it became the foundational catastrophe of our species, the day the sky turned to fire. The physical evidence of the glass and the mythological evidence of the stories are two pieces of the same puzzle. One is written in the geology of the Earth, the other in the soul of humanity. Together, they build a compelling case that our planet has experienced civilization reset events, global catastrophes that brought golden ages to a sudden, fiery close. So we are left with a haunting question. If these myths are true records of historical events, what other clues did these lost civilizations leave behind? The Libyan desert glass is not merely a scientific oddity. It is a direct physical record of apocalypse, and its properties are as startling as its origin story. This glass, found scattered across the Great Sand Sea, is one of the purest natural glasses ever discovered on our planet. Some specimens are composed of 98% silica, a clarity that speaks to the ferocity and singularity of the event that created it. Its distribution is not a small patch of glittering sand. It covers thousands of square kilometers, a staggering expanse that demands a release of energy almost beyond human comprehension. This was not a localized fire, it was a regional inferno, but the mystery deepens far beyond the desert sands. Inside the tomb of the boy King Tutankhamun, among his golden treasures, archaeologists found a beautiful scarab pendant. This sacred amulet, placed to protect the pharaoh in the afterlife, was not carved from jade or lapis lazuli. It was meticulously crafted from a single piece of Libyan desert glass. Why would the ancient Egyptians choose this specific, otherworldly material for one of their most important royal burials? This was not a common stone. It suggests they held it in the highest regard, perhaps viewing it as a sacred relic, a tangible piece from a legendary age, a time they might have called the time of the gods. They were preserving a fragment of the cataclysm itself, turning a weapon of destruction into a symbol of protection and power. The glass itself holds further, silent testimony to the violence of its birth. Scientific analysis reveals it contains rare minerals like lecitlerite. This is a form of silica that does not form in volcanoes or forest fires. It can only be created at ultra-high temperatures, the kind of instantaneous, searing heat generated by a nuclear explosion or a massive celestial impact. Lecitlerite is the mineral equivalent of a fingerprint left at a crime scene, and it points directly to a sky-born detonation of unimaginable force. This tangible evidence, locked within the glass for millennia, provides a chilling link to that apocalyptic event. It confirms that the myths of a reign of fire are not mere fantasy. They are the human echo of a real geological event that scarred the planet and reset the course of human history. The distribution of these ancient glass fields is far from random. They lie scattered across the globe in places that history and myth remember as sites of profound upheaval. one of the most compelling connections is found not in Egypt but in the Americas. The proposed Younger Dryas impact hypothesis points to a catastrophic event around 12,800 years ago. The theory suggests our planet was struck by fragments of a disintegrating comet, a cosmic barrage that would have triggered firestorms, colossal floods, and a dramatic plunge in global temperatures. This was not a single impact but a shotgun blast of destruction across the continents. The timeline is chillingly precise. This period marks the abrupt extinction of magnificent megafauna, creatures like the woolly mammoth and the giant sloth that had thrived for millennia. It also coincides with the sudden disappearance of the sophisticated Clovis people, one of the earliest and most widespread cultures in North America. Their distinctive stone tools are found everywhere, and then they simply vanish from the archaeological record. This is not a slow decline from climate change or overhunting. This looks like a switch being flipped. A vibrant world full of massive animals and emerging human societies was brought to a screeching halt. The geographical overlap is impossible to ignore. When we map the suspected impact sites and the evidence of widespread burning from that era, they align eerily well with regions that hold their own secrets of ancient glass and unexplained destruction. This suggests we are not looking at isolated incidents, but at the scattered pieces of a single global catastrophe. If a fragmented comet did indeed rain down across the Earth, it would have left behind more than just craters. It would have left fields of fused sand, a layer of soot in the ice cores, and a deep cultural trauma passed down for generations. The desert glass is a permanent physical marker of that day the sky fell. It is the geological proof that the myths of world-ending fire are rooted in a terrifying reality. This theory transforms our understanding of human history from a steady, linear progression into something far more dramatic and fragile. It suggests that civilization is not a continuous climb, but a cycle of growth and annihilation. So what other evidence lies buried, waiting to confirm that our ancestors barely survived a cosmic winter that reshaped the world? The Airburst Hypothesis presents a terrifyingly elegant solution to the desert glass mystery. A celestial object, perhaps a mile across, tears into the Earth's atmosphere at tens of thousands of miles per hour. It does not strike the ground. Instead, the immense pressure and friction of our atmosphere causes it to detonate high above the surface, unleashing its entire kinetic energy in a single, blinding flash. This is not an impact, it is a celestial bomb detonating in the sky. The heat radiating downward would be more than sufficient to instantly melt the sand beneath into a rolling sea of glass. The accompanying shockwave would then scour that freshly formed glass, shattering some of it and sweeping the rest into the immense fields we find today. This explains the absence of a crater perfectly. The hammer blow came not from below, but from directly above. Computer simulations of such an event are sobering. They show temperatures at the epicenter soaring beyond 3,000 degrees Celsius, a heat so absolute it vaporizes everything in its immediate path and fuses silica sand across thousands of square kilometers in the blink of an eye. But the heat is only the first part of the horror. The atmospheric shockwave that follows would have been equally catastrophic. It would have hit with the force of a multi-megaton nuclear explosion, flattening forests, pulverizing mountainsides, and scouring the landscape clean of any structures or life. For any human or animal caught beneath this atmospheric detonation, there would have been no warning and no escape. The effect on local ecosystems would have been an instantaneous reset. The food web, from the smallest plants to the largest predators, would have been obliterated in a flash. The land would be left sterile, covered in a layer of glass and ash, a clean slate upon which nature would have to slowly, painstakingly begin again. This model transforms the desert glass from a curious geological formation into a stark marker of a planetary scale catastrophe. It provides a physical, testable mechanism for how a civilization, or even multiple cultures, could be erased from a region so completely that only fragments of their existence and the stories of their fiery end would remain. How does this terrifying model align with the historical and archaeological record? Does the timing of this proposed catastrophe match the sudden collapse of ancient societies? To understand the sheer power needed to forge desert glass, we can look to a more familiar phenomenon. When lightning strikes a sandy beach, it can create delicate, root-like tubes of glass called fulgurites. These are nature's proof that a sudden, intense burst of energy can indeed fuse sand into a glassy substance. The process is called vitrification, where a material is melted so rapidly it becomes a glass without forming a crystalline structure. Studying fulgurites gives scientists a miniature laboratory to understand the basic physics of this transformation. But here is the critical distinction. A fulgurite is a tiny, fragile sculpture, often no thicker than a finger. The Libyan desert glass, by contrast, exists in chunks that can weigh many pounds, scattered across an area larger than some countries. The energy required to produce it is not just a little more than a lightning bolt. It is billions of times greater. This is the difference between a single spark and the heart of a star. No lightning storm, no matter how violent, could ever generate the sustained, continent-scorching heat required to create such a vast sea of glass. This fundamental difference in scale is our most important clue. It eliminates terrestrial explanations like lightning or volcanic activity with absolute certainty. The only force left on the table is an extraterrestrial one. The unique conditions that produced the desert glass were not of this world. They were delivered from the depths of space, a random cosmic event that, for a split second, turned a portion of our planet into the surface of a star. This realization forces a profound question. If such an unimaginable event occurred, what was the collateral damage? What else was happening across the globe at that exact moment in prehistory? The glass itself is a stark monument to the event, but its true story is written in the silent gaps of our own history. The age of this desert glass is the final piece of the puzzle, a timestamp on the apocalypse. To unlock it, scientists turn to radiometric dating, a process that reads the natural atomic clocks trapped inside the material. Methods like potassium-argon dating measure the slow, steady decay of radioactive potassium into argon gas. The amount of argon that accumulates acts like an hourglass, telling researchers how long it has been since the glass was formed in that searing instant of heat. For the vast fields of Libyan desert glass, the primary date returned is staggeringly ancient, around 29 million years. This seems to place the event deep in Earth's past, long before the first humans walked the planet. Yet the story does not end there. A compelling controversy simmers just beneath the surface. Some researchers point to specific deposits that may be far younger. Using other techniques like fission track dating, which counts the microscopic trails left by decaying uranium atoms, they argue for a Pleistocene age for some of this glass. This would bring the cataclysm forward into a much more recent window, a time when early human societies were beginning to form and spread across the globe. This dating debate is not just academic, it is the core of the entire mystery. If the glass is 29 million years old, it is a fascinating geological relic of a world before us. But if some of it is only 12,000 or 20,000 or even 30,000 years old, then everything changes. A younger date directly implicates this sky-born inferno in human affairs. It transforms the glass from a natural wonder into a potential murder weapon, the very cause of a civilization reset that echoes through our oldest myths. The timeline is the linchpin. Getting it right means we can finally connect the physical evidence of the glass with the archaeological evidence of societal collapse and the mythological evidence of a reign of fire. If the dates align, the case becomes overwhelming. We are then forced to confront a history punctuated by global catastrophes, events from the heavens that have repeatedly scoured the slate clean, leaving humanity to rebuild from the ashes time and time again. So what other clues can help us resolve this chronological conflict and pinpoint the true moment the sky turned to fire? The true scale of this ancient disaster is written in stone, in the very layers of the earth itself. To understand what happened, we must look beyond the glass fields and into the global geological record. Scientists drill deep into ice caps and extract cores from ancient lake beds, reading the planet's history like the pages of a book. At a specific, critical boundary in time, around 12,800 years ago, the story becomes terrifyingly clear. The sedimentary layers from this period reveal a sudden, dramatic shift. One of the most telling clues is a thin, global layer rich in the element iridium. Iridium is incredibly rare on Earth's surface, but it is abundant in asteroids and comets. Finding a spike of it in the soil is like finding gunpowder residue at a crime scene, a direct chemical signature of a cosmic impact, but the evidence does not stop there. The same layer is also filled with microscopic nanodiamonds. These tiny, super-hard crystals are not formed by slow geological processes. They are forged in the immense pressures and temperatures of a colossal explosion, the kind of shockwave generated by an object from space slamming into our atmosphere. And then there is the soot, vast quantities of it, evidence of continent-spanning wildfires that scorch the planet. When you piece these clues together, the picture that emerges is one of utter devastation. A comet fragment explodes in the atmosphere, scattering iridium and creating a blast wave powerful enough to form nanodiamonds. The subsequent fireball and rain of molten debris ignites forests and grasslands across the globe, leaving a blanket of soot in the geological record. This is the broader crime scene, and the desert glass is the smoking gun left at the center of it all. It is the direct, physical remnant of that initial, searing heat pulse, the ground zero where the energy was so concentrated it fused the Earth itself. This single event did not just melt sand. It triggered a chain reaction of global disruptions, a rapid climate lurch into a deep freeze known as the Younger Dryas. This sudden winter would have been a death sentence for any society dependent on agriculture and stable weather patterns. It is within this cataclysmic context that the disappearance of entire cultures begins to make brutal sense. These were not slow declines, they were sudden, global resets, where the very ground beneath their feet turned to glass and the sky above turned to fire and ash. What fragile achievements might have been lost in that ancient, burning twilight? Perhaps they did see it coming. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe, a site that predates Stonehenge by thousands of years, tell a cryptic story. On its massive, T-shaped pillars among the intricate animals are clear depictions of scorpions, vultures, and what many researchers argue are comets. One pillar, known as the Vulture Stone, shows a cluster of round objects in the sky with a headless human figure below. This is not simple decoration. It looks like a record, a Stone Age monument erected to commemorate a celestial event so devastating it was seared into cultural memory. The precise alignment of these pillars themselves suggests their builders possessed a sophisticated grasp of the stars, turning their temple into both a spiritual center and an observatory. They were watching the sky and they carved what they feared most onto the very bedrock of their world, This was not primitive art, it was a warning for the ages. Could these ancient astronomers have understood the cyclical nature of such cosmic threats? The global distribution of megalithic sites hints at a shared, profound knowledge. From the sun-watching precision of Stonehenge to the stargazing corridors of Newgrange, our ancestors were obsessed with the heavens. This was not just for planting seasons. It was for survival. They were tracking the long cycles of comets and asteroids, trying to predict the next time the sky might fall. For a civilization that had already lived through one such event, this would have been the most crucial science of all. The desert glass itself may have been the ultimate teaching tool. To a culture that witnessed its creation, this strange, fused substance littering the ground was direct, tangible proof of celestial power. It was a material they knew could not be made by any human hand or earthly fire. It was a substance born of the sky. This might explain why the Egyptians enshrined it in Tutankhamun's tomb. They were not just using a pretty stone, they were incorporating a relic of the gods, a piece of that primordial fire, believing it held protective power because it was a literal fragment of the very force that had once reshaped the world. Their myths of a fiery rain were not abstract. They were backed by physical evidence they could hold in their hands. So what other technologies or understandings might such a culture have possessed, only to have them wiped away by the very event they sought to comprehend? The story of shattered glass is written across the entire planet. Tektites are another form of this celestial evidence, but their origin story is even more violent. Imagine molten rock, blasted into the sky by a meteorite impact, soaring through the upper atmosphere in a fiery arc before cooling into solid, dark glass and raining down hundreds or even thousands of miles away. These are not formed by heat alone like the desert glass. They are the literal splatter from a cosmic collision, frozen into aerodynamic shapes by their hypersonic flight. Their distribution forms vast patterns known as strewn fields, painting a map of ancient impacts across the globe. The Australasian strewn field is one of the largest, a colossal scatter of tektites covering nearly a third of the Earth's surface, from Southeast Asia all the way to the southern Indian Ocean. The event that created this immense field, dated to around 790,000 years ago, was so powerful it is believed to have triggered a reversal of the planet's magnetic field and caused a dramatic shift in the global climate. This was not a single point of destruction. It was a global event with consequences that reshaped the environment for millennia, but the pattern repeats. North America has its own tektite field, linked to the Chesapeake Bay impact event 35 million years ago. Each of these strewn fields is a ghost image of a separate cataclysm, a different day when the sky fell in a different part of the world. This repeated pattern of global glass formation tells a story far grander and more terrifying than a single disaster. It suggests that civilization-challenging cataclysms are not a one-time anomaly in Earth's history. They are a recurring feature of our existence in a dynamic and sometimes violent solar system. The desert glass, the tektites, they are all pieces of the same puzzle, confirming that our planet's history is punctuated by resets. If these events have happened repeatedly across deep time, how many times has the climb of human progress been interrupted? And what does this cyclical pattern of destruction and rebirth mean for our own future? A single day of celestial fire can cast a shadow that lasts for generations. The initial hellscape of melting sand and scorching winds is only the beginning of the end. The real killer often arrives silently in the form of a deep and prolonged chill. When a large object detonates in our atmosphere or strikes the ground, it hurls unimaginable quantities of dust, soot, and sulfur aerosols high into the stratosphere. This debris does not simply fall back to Earth. It forms a global shroud, a veil that can linger for years, effectively blocking a significant portion of the sun's life-giving light. This is the mechanics of an impact winter. Temperatures plummet across the globe, growing seasons vanish, rains fail as the fundamental cycles of weather are disrupted. For any society reliant on farming, this is an existential threat. A single failed harvest can cause famine. A decade of perpetual gray skies and cold means the complete collapse of the food web, leading to mass starvation and the disintegration of social order. It is a quiet, drawn-out apocalypse that follows the initial fiery roar. Yet the climate response is not always a plunge into cold. In some scenarios, the immense heat from the impact can ignite global wildfires on a scale we can barely conceive. These infernos would pump staggering amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. In this case, the planet's blanket thickens, trapping heat and triggering a period of rapid global warming. The result is the same societal collapse, just delivered by a different mechanism: drought and desertification instead of frost and famine. This is the profound climate connection. A civilization could survive the initial firestorm, only to be slowly strangled by the broken climate that follows. The fields of desert glass are far more than a geological curiosity. They are the physical timestamp of that climate trigger, the moment the global thermostat was violently reset. They mark the day a prosperous, emerging society could have been plunged into a centuries-long struggle for survival, a desperate fight that would force the scattered survivors to abandon their cities, their knowledge, and their old ways of life, or simply perish beneath a darkened sky. These ancient stories of a golden age are far more than simple fables. Nearly every culture tells of a glorious, lost epoch when humanity lived in a state of peace and technological marvel, a time abruptly ended by a world-shattering catastrophe. What if these are not allegories but encrypted history? The global distribution of desert glass gives us a key to decode them. Consider the Sumerian Eridu Genesis, one of humanity's oldest written stories. It describes a time before the Great Flood, when humans lived alongside the gods and possessed profound knowledge. This golden era was destroyed when the deities decided to send a deluge to wipe out humanity, sparing only one righteous man, Ziusudra, who built a boat to preserve life. The Greek version, the myth of Deucalion, is strikingly similar. A golden race of humans is wiped out by a flood sent by Zeus, with only Deucalion and his wife Pyrrha surviving to repopulate the world. And of course, the biblical story of Noah follows this exact blueprint. The consistency is uncanny: a divine warning, a global flood, and a handful of survivors tasked with starting over. For centuries, these were viewed as purely theological tales, but the existence of desert glass forces us to reconsider. What if the Great Flood was not the only cataclysm? What if the rain of fire that created the glass is the true, physical event behind the allegory of divine punishment? A sky-born inferno that melted continents would have triggered unimaginable climate chaos. The heat would have vaporized ice caps and triggered colossal tsunamis, a genuine global flood following the fire. The stories of a single catastrophic punishment by water might be a simplified, merged memory of a multifaceted disaster that began in the heavens. This reframes the entire concept of the Golden Age. It may not have been a metaphorical time of innocence, but a literal period of cultural and technological advancement achieved by a now vanished civilization. This was a society that could have been sophisticated enough to track the stars and perhaps even understand the cyclical threat from space, a knowledge that was lost when their world was turned to glass and ash. The survivors, the Noahs and Deucalions of the world, would have carried only fragments of this knowledge into the new age, tales of a wonderful time that was destroyed by the anger of the gods. Desert glass provides the tangible evidence that makes this reinterpretation possible. It is the physical anchor that connects these universal myths to a real, geological event of apocalyptic proportions. The stories are not just moral lessons, they are the fragmented, traumatized memoirs of our ancestors, a warning etched in myth about the day the sky fell and a golden world was lost forever. The evidence of ancient destruction is not confined to remote deserts. High on windswept hills across Scotland and France, the stone ramparts of Iron Age forts tell a strange and silent story. Sections of these massive walls are not simply collapsed. They have been vitrified, transformed into a dark, glassy slag that binds the stones together in a solidified river of rock. This process requires sustained temperatures in excess of 1,100 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense it can only be achieved in a modern industrial furnace or the heart of a volcano. The idea that Iron Age people could, or would, deliberately generate such heat to fuse their own defensive walls makes little sense. A simple wood fire, even a massive one, simply cannot reach these temperatures. So what force turned these formidable structures partially to glass? The conventional explanations, like deliberate construction or accidental fire, crumble under the sheer thermal requirements. This has led to a more radical yet compelling hypothesis. Could these forts bear the scars of a localized airburst? Imagine a fragment of a larger comet, a smaller cousin of the object that glassed the Sahara, detonating directly above a populated hill fort. The downward blast of heat would be instantaneous and overwhelming. It would not incinerate the entire structure, but it would wash over the upper ramparts like a wave of liquid fire, flash melting the granite walls and fusing them into the vitrified state we see today. The uneven nature of the vitrification, found only on certain sides and tops of walls, supports this idea of a directed, sky-borne heat source. If this theory holds, it changes the entire narrative. The desert glass was a warning written on a blank canvas. The vitrified forts are that same warning etched directly onto the homes of our ancestors. This suggests that the civilization-resetting events of antiquity were not distant phenomena that only affected uninhabited regions. They were intimate, terrifying, and direct. They struck at the very centers of human community, turning symbols of power and safety into monuments of instantaneous destruction. What other human achievements might have been flash-fried into oblivion, leaving behind only these cryptic, glass-lined ruins? Survival itself becomes the new foundation after the sky falls. The immediate horror of the catastrophe fades, replaced by a desperate, grinding reality. The survivors, scattered and traumatized, are left with nothing but the broken pieces of their world. This is the moment civilization truly resets. Complex knowledge, from metalworking to advanced agriculture, vanishes in a single generation when there are no teachers left and no stable society to preserve it. Social hierarchies and laws dissolve, replaced by the raw imperative of finding food and shelter. We see this stark pattern etched into the archaeological record after events like the Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE, a period where grand palaces, intricate writing systems, and international trade networks across the Mediterranean simply disintegrated, plunging the region into a dark age for centuries. In the silence that follows such a cataclysm, what remains? The survivors grasp for anything that can provide stability, meaning, and a link to the incomprehensible power that remade their world. This is where an object like desert glass transforms from a geological curiosity into a cultural cornerstone. For a people who witnessed the desert turn to a sea of fire, this strange, beautiful substance was not just a rock. It was a tangible piece of the apocalypse, a relic of the gods' fury. It is easy to see how they might have imbued it with profound spiritual significance, viewing it as a talisman of both destruction and protection. Holding a piece of that sky-born fire was to hold a fragment of divine power, a focus for new myths and rituals designed to explain why the world ended and how a new one could be built from its ashes. The human mind cannot long abide chaos. We are driven to find narratives to weave meaning from devastation. The veneration of desert glass and objects like it likely became the seed for the religions and worldviews of these post-catastrophe societies. Their creation stories, their gods of thunder and fire, their rituals pleading for mercy from the heavens, all could have grown from this fundamental need to make sense of the glass beneath their feet. It was proof that the gods were real, their anger was absolute, and their favor was the only path forward. This sacred object, born of absolute destruction, became a guide for rebirth. The silent stones of Mohenjo-Daro tell a story of an ordinary day that ended in fire. This great metropolis of the Indus Valley, one of the world's earliest and most meticulously planned cities, presents archaeologists with a chilling mystery. Its streets are littered with skeletons, many found in the open, some still holding hands, as if a sudden, inescapable doom fell upon them in a single moment. But it is the condition of the ruins themselves that is most telling. Parts of the ancient structures show clear signs of vitrification, where the very bricks and stone have been fused into a glassy slag. The intense heat required for this was not from a common house fire or even a city-wide conflagration. It was a flash of heat so extreme and so instantaneous that it could have melted the upper portions of buildings while leaving lower walls relatively intact. This pattern of destruction, concentrated and ferociously hot, points a finger directly toward the sky. Could a thermal pulse from an atmospheric explosion have instantly flash-heated the entire city? The proximity of such a catastrophic site to the vast desert glass fields of other regions invites a terrifying connection. We are not looking at the slow decay of an empire. We are looking at a snapshot of a single horrific day, a day when the sky turned against the earth. This theme of instantaneous ruin is echoed in other enigmatic sites. The ancient city of Tall El Hamam in the Jordan Valley, for instance, shows a similar, bizarre layer of destruction. Archaeologists found a stratum where mud-brick walls had been suddenly obliterated, their foundations scorched, and the debris scattered across a wide area. Pottery fragments were melted on the outside, yet their inner surfaces remained unscathed, a clear sign of a brief, searing heat wave that passed over everything in an instant. The distribution of the damage suggests a single, directional blast, not a prolonged siege or a ground-level fire. When you map these sites of sudden, high-temperature destruction and place them near the evidence of cosmic impacts like desert glass and Tektite fields, a pattern of regional apocalypses begins to emerge. These were not cities that fell. They were cities that were switched off, their vibrant life and complex culture erased in the time it takes to draw a single, terrified breath. What other thriving centers of human achievement might have vanished in the same flash of celestial light, leaving behind only their scorched foundations and their unanswerable silence? These celestial catastrophes may not be random accidents of a chaotic universe. They could be part of a deeper cosmic rhythm. Some scientists point to the grand motions of our solar system itself as a potential trigger for these civilization-resetting events. As our Sun, with all its planets in tow, slowly orbits the center of the Milky Way galaxy, it does not travel on a flat, even plane. Instead, it oscillates up and down, passing through the dense, crowded disk of the galactic plane roughly every 30 to 35 million years. This periodic journey through a region teeming with stars, gas, and dark matter could significantly disrupt the distant cloud of comets at the very edge of our solar system, the Oort cloud. This gravitational nudging might send a shower of icy bodies spiraling inward toward the Sun and on a potential collision course with Earth. It is a celestial clock ticking on a scale almost too vast to comprehend, yet its potential to influence life on our planet is profound. The immense age of the primary Libyan desert glass, around 29 million years old, fits eerily well within this proposed cycle, suggesting it could be a relic from one of these periodic galactic crossings. This transforms the glass from a single monument to a past disaster into a potential data point in a recurring pattern of planetary upheaval. Our ancestors, it seems, may have sensed this rhythm on an intuitive level, encoding it into their most sacred understandings of time. The ancient Hindus spoke of the great wheel of the yugas, vast cycles of creation and destruction that define the very breadth of the universe, moving from golden ages down into dark ages and back again. The Maya, with their incredibly precise long-count calendar, were not just tracking years, they were mapping epochs, their cosmology deeply interwoven with the concept of world renewal through catastrophic change. These are not mere philosophical musings. They are sophisticated models of cosmic time that align startlingly well with the geological evidence of cyclical bombardment. If this hypothesis holds true, then the desert glass scattered across the Sahara is more than just evidence of one ancient catastrophe. It is a sample from one tick of the cosmic clock, a physical piece of a cycle that has repeated throughout Earth's deep history and will, in all likelihood, repeat again. This realization forces a fundamental shift in perspective. The question is no longer just what happened to our distant ancestors. The question becomes, where are we now within this grand cycle? Understanding the triggers and effects of these events, as recorded in both the geology of our planet and the myths of our species, is no longer an academic exercise. It becomes the most crucial long-term project for humanity, a vital key to assessing our own future trajectory and perhaps one day ensuring our survival when the clock next strikes. The ruins of a Bronze Age city in Jordan offer a chillingly specific case study. For centuries, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah was viewed as pure allegory, a dramatic tale of divine punishment. But the archaeological site of Tall El Hamam presents a physical crime scene that matches the ancient text in terrifying detail. Excavations revealed a city layer dating to around 1650 BC that was not simply abandoned or conquered. It was flash-frozen in a moment of utter devastation. The mud-brick walls of the upper city were violently blown outward, their foundations scorched. Pottery fragments were melted into a bubbled, glassy slag on their outer surfaces, while the inner surfaces remained smooth and unchanged. This is the unmistakable signature of an instantaneous, searing heat wave, not a slow-burning fire. Human bone fragments recovered from the site show signs of extreme splintering and calcination, effects consistent with a sudden, intense thermal pulse. The entire city was subjected to a brief, hellish temperature spike that could have vaporized flesh, melted clay, and turned the very air to fire. This is precisely the kind of destruction an atmospheric airburst would deliver. The biblical description of fire and brimstone raining from the heavens reads less like a metaphor and more like an eyewitness account of a comet fragment exploding in the sky. The brimstone, or sulfur, would have been a component of the celestial body, scattering and combusting in the inferno. The event was so localized and so complete that it would have been interpreted by survivors as a targeted act of a god, a divine cleansing that erased the city from the map and left its memory as a permanent warning. This single site connects the dots between the physical force of a cosmic impact and the powerful mythological lessons that grew from its ashes. It demonstrates how a natural, astronomical event could become the foundation for a story of morality told for millennia. forever cementing the link between human transgression and celestial fire in the cultural memory of an entire region. This ancient cycle of destruction forces a sobering look at our own future. The same cosmic forces that forged the desert glass and toppled ancient cities are still at work in our solar system today. A relatively small object, perhaps only a few hundred meters across, was enough to melt the Sahara and potentially erase entire chapters of human history. The logical conclusion is terrifyingly simple. A larger impact from an asteroid or comet measured in kilometers would not be a regional catastrophe. It would be a global extinction event on par with the one that ended the age of the dinosaurs. The geological record proves this has happened before, and the laws of physics assure us it will happen again. The only real question is when. This is not speculative fiction. It is a direct and actionable threat, one that has spurred the creation of dedicated global efforts like NASA, a Planetary Defense Coordination Office. This office is not a theoretical think tank. Its mission is profoundly practical: to find, track, and characterize potentially hazardous near-Earth objects. Its very existence is a testament to the lessons we are finally learning from our own planet's scarred history. The recent Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART mission, marked a pivotal moment in human history. For the first time, we intentionally altered the orbit of a celestial body, a small moonlet orbiting an asteroid. This successful test proves that the concept of deflecting a dangerous object is not just a plot for a movie. It is a viable, achievable technology. The knowledge we gain from studying ancient glass and impact craters directly fuels this modern urgency. By understanding the sheer power released in these events, we can better model the threats and engineer effective solutions. We are, in a very real sense, using the evidence of past apocalypses to build a shield for our future. The silent, shimmering glass of the desert is more than a relic. It is a warning, a call to action written in stone and sand. It reminds us that our tenure on this planet is fragile, and that our continued survival may one day depend on our ability to look to the heavens, not with fear, but with a determined and watchful eye. That collective trauma, seared into the minds of the survivors, would ripple across generations. A civilization reset event of this magnitude does more than just shatter cities. It shatters the human sense of security, leaving a permanent crack in our collective consciousness. The world, once a stable and predictable home, is revealed to be a precarious stage under a sky that can, without warning, turn to fire. This deep-seated knowledge of our own fragility may well be the root of our most profound cultural instincts. It explains our universal fascination with stories of apocalypse and rebirth, from modern blockbuster films to the oldest religious texts. We are drawn to these narratives because they are not just fiction. They are a psychological echo of a real, inherited memory. The fear of the sky, once a source of wonder, becomes a source of existential dread, giving rise to gods of thunder and storm who must be appeased. This trauma also forged a powerful drive for preservation. The obsessive efforts of ancient cultures to build monuments that touch the stars, to align their temples with celestial movements, and to record their knowledge in stone, all point to a species determined to leave a mark, to scream into the void that we were here, lest we be forgotten once again. Desert glass, as a tangible piece of that primal catastrophe, serves as the ultimate memento mori. It is a physical reminder that our existence is a fragile, fleeting gift. This single, terrifying thought has fundamentally shaped the course of human expression, fueling our greatest art, our most profound religious beliefs, and our deepest philosophical questions about meaning in a universe that can so easily erase us. The mystery of celestial glass does not belong to Egypt alone. Far to the south, cradled by the stark and arid plains of Chile's Atacama Desert, another enigma lies scattered under the sun. Here, researchers have uncovered vast, shimmering fields of glass, but this glass is different. Its chemical signature and the way it is strewn across the landscape tell a new chapter in this ancient story. While the Libyan glass is a monument to a singular, ferocious event, the Atacama glass appears to be the result of a separate, perhaps more recent, sky-born firestorm. Early scientific analysis points toward a formation date chillingly close to 12,000 years ago. This timeline places it squarely within the younger Dryas period, that pivotal moment of global cooling and megafaunal extinction. The implications are staggering. We are no longer looking at a single, isolated cataclysm in one remote part of the world. The Atacama discovery proves these devastating airbursts were a global phenomenon. They were not a lone accident, but a pattern of celestial bombardment that rained down on multiple continents simultaneously. Each new field of glass from the Sahara to South America is another data point on a map of global apocalypse. They are the scorch marks left by a fragmented comet or a swarm of asteroids, each impact zone a testament to a world on fire. This geographical spread forces us to widen our perspective dramatically. It was not just one civilization that faced the inferno, but human and animal populations across the entire planet, all suffering under the same burning sky at the same point in deep time. How many other fields of forgotten glass are still waiting to be found, each one holding a piece of this planet-spanning puzzle? Geology gives us the raw, physical facts of the catastrophe. It tells us the temperature, the pressure, the precise moment the sand turned to glass. Archaeology uncovers the human cost, the shattered cities and silent graves that speak of a world interrupted. But mythology holds the terror, the awe, the profound psychological scar left on those who survived. Each of these fields on its own offers only a fragment of the truth. A geologist can analyze the glass but cannot hear the screams of the witnesses. An archaeologist can map a ruined city but cannot feel the survivors' desperate need to explain why their gods were angry. A mythologist can recite the ancient stories but cannot prove the fire was real. It is only when we weave these threads together that the full, terrifying picture emerges. The chemical signature of the glass matches the timeline of the city's destruction, and that timeline, in turn, aligns perfectly with the myths of a rain of fire passed down in that very region. This is not a coincidence, this is corroboration. This interdisciplinary synthesis transforms a collection of curious anomalies into a powerful, evidence-based argument. It allows us to move beyond the limitations of any single specialty and approach our deep past with a new kind of rigor, one that respects both the data in the ground and the stories in the heart. The desert glass is the anchor, the undeniable physical proof that something cataclysmic happened. The vitrified ruins of places like Tall El Hamam are the intermediate evidence, showing the direct effect of that force on human civilization. And the global flood and fire myths are the lasting echo, the cultural memory of that trauma encoded into the foundational beliefs of our species. When all three lines of evidence converge so strikingly, we are no longer dealing with fringe speculation. We are looking at a new, more complex, and far more dramatic understanding of human history, one where the sky has fallen before, and the memory of that fall has shaped everything we have become. This holistic view challenges us to see our ancestors not as primitive people inventing fanciful tales, but as resilient survivors doing their best to make sense of a world-shattering event, preserving its memory for generations yet unborn. This resistance from established institutions is a familiar story in science. For generations, the dominant view of history was one of gradualism. a slow and steady climb where civilizations developed in relative isolation, evolving at their own pace through incremental innovation and local conflict. The notion that a single day from the heavens could erase all that progress, that our past is punctuated by sudden, violent resets, was seen as a fringe idea, almost a regression to unscientific myths. Suggesting that a piece of glass could rewrite the timeline of human development challenges entire academic careers built upon the gradualist model. It questions the very foundations of how we understand cultural evolution. Yet this kind of intellectual friction is not a sign of a failing idea. It is the essential engine of scientific revolution. We have seen this pattern before. The theory of plate tectonics was once ridiculed, its proponents dismissed for suggesting that continents could drift across the globe. The idea that an asteroid impact caused the extinction of the dinosaurs was a radical heresy before the iridium layer in the geologic record became undeniable proof. In each case, a stubborn attachment to the old paradigm eventually gave way to an overwhelming weight of new evidence. The story of desert glass now sits at this very crossroads. It is no longer just a single anomaly. It is a data point supported by geology, archaeology, and the startling consistency of global mythology. This convergence from disparate fields is what makes a true paradigm shift increasingly inevitable. The real question is not whether the evidence exists, but how willing we are to let it change our fundamental understanding of the human story. Our attachment to a linear, predictable past may be the greatest obstacle to seeing the cyclical, dramatic truth written in the glass beneath our feet. The search for answers now pushes into the world's most remote and untouched landscapes. Vast, unexplored stretches of Central Asia's high deserts, the Rub al Khali in Arabia, and the deep Australian outback are all prime candidates for hidden glass fields. These regions share the same essential ingredients, vast sandy basins that have remained geologically stable for millennia, acting as perfect preservation sites for evidence of ancient sky fire. Finding new fields is no longer just a matter of luck or foot surveys. Modern technology offers powerful new eyes. Satellite spectroscopy can analyze the light reflected from the Earth's surface, pinpointing the unique chemical signature of fused silica from orbit. Ground-penetrating radar can then map subterranean deposits, revealing vast hidden sheets of glass buried under shifting dunes for thousands of years. Each new discovery would be another crucial data point, helping us map the true extent of these cataclysms, but finding new glass is only half the battle. The fierce debate over its age remains the single biggest obstacle to a unified theory. The 29-million-year date for the primary Libyan field creates a schism between the geological evidence and the archaeological and mythological timeline. This is where ultra-precise redating comes in. Techniques like atom probe tomography can analyze materials at an atomic scale, offering resolutions far beyond current methods. Applying these advanced processes to existing glass samples, especially those from controversial or poorly dated sites, could finally settle the timeline. A confirmed, widespread event 12,000 years ago would be a revolution, seamlessly stitching together the physical evidence of the glass with the collapse of Clovis culture, the megafaunal extinctions, and the global flood myths. This is not a static, settled science. It is a living, breathing investigation where every new scan of a desert from space and every new atomic clock reading from a speck of glass carries the potential to overturn our deepest assumptions about the past. The story of humanity may be waiting not in a lost library, but in the silent, shimmering fields we have yet to find. These fragments of glass scattered across our deserts are the silent witnesses to our planet's most violent hours. They are not merely geological oddities, but permanent records of apocalypse, evidence of days when the very sky turned to fire and the clock of human civilization was reset. We have followed their trail from the scorching sands of the Sahara to the high stone walls of ancient forts, from the tomb of a pharaoh to the ruins of a city flash fried in an instant. This journey forces a profound and humbling realization. Our history is not the smooth, upward climb we often imagine. It is a story punctuated by catastrophic interruptions, by global events that erased entire chapters of human achievement and left our ancestors to rebuild from the ashes, clutching only fragments of the old world's knowledge. The scientific mystery of the glass formation, the archaeological evidence of sudden, high-temperature destruction, and the hauntingly consistent global myths of fire and flood are not separate puzzles. They are different pieces of a single, terrifying picture. This evidence challenges us to look deeper, to question the established narratives of a slow and steady past, and to remember the fragile thread on which our existence has always hung. We are the descendants of those who survived the fire. The story written in this glass is ultimately our own, a reminder of both our profound vulnerability and our incredible resilience. What do you believe these silent, shimmering witnesses are trying to tell us? Share your thoughts on these profound ideas in the comments below.